it's from a logistics point of view, you're adding like what? It was 3 weeks of extra sailing in the time of World War II when the engines have improved. So probably can assume 4 weeks, four and a half
Yeah,
weeks at the bare minimum.
yeah.
And Australia is contributing a lot to
India,
the
Anzac, yeah,
the
even
Anzacs, the
Africa for
Indian.
that matter. Yeah,
Because after the Gallipoli front, they actually get deployed to the Western Front because the Australian Corps, if I'm not mistaken, towards the end of World War One on the Western Front, I think was the single largest formation uh, that
hmm.
at the core level. Like only armies were larger, and I think at its
Yeah,
peak strength under John Monash, who is an absolute legend to me, the Australian Corps had over 110,000 soldiers.
damn. Yeah, I mean, it's very sad what happened to Anzac forces because the Gallipoli is the unmitigated disaster that everyone thinks it is. It wasn't supposed to go the way it was. Of course, there wasn't supposed to be a land campaign. It was supposed to be just what they would call a naval force. They were going to force their way up through the Dardanelles, and they were going to use a bunch of outdated, obsolete warships. A lot of them were actually set to be scrapped the following year, and
I
unfortunately,
believe it was Churchill's idea who wanted
yes.
to just use these.
Well, actually, it was another guy. I forget the name of the captain who came up with the
Oh
idea,
yeah,
but Churchill fully endorsed it, so it became
and yeah,
his.
at that time Churchill was First Lord of the Admiralty, which, as the senior most naval officer in Britain, that carried a lot of weight. And on prima facie, it's not a bad idea.
No, it
If
was actually a good idea, but the
you
captain,
might as well,
like the
yeah. And I think the attack that plan even came about because the French and British just assumed that they just show up with a few battleships and the Ottomans would just surrender. And they lost, I think, 3 battleships to mines before any land campaign even took place.
it was an unmitigated
Battleships,
disaster. I
yeah,
mean,
and
what
battleships are
ended up
pretty expensive.
well, yeah, they're expensive, but the thing is, the majority of the ships were either old and obsolete, like they were too slow to do any fleet action, so they couldn't be part of the Grand Fleet against the Germans.
That's
So
what we
there was
mentioned
no
in
use.
Judgment.
Yeah, they were going to be used. They couldn't use some of these even for escort duties for some of the fatter ships, so they were absolutely useless. A lot of them were going to be scrapped for just raw metal to be used for other things the next year. So it was a perfect plan for like, what do we do with these ships, right? The thing that got screwed up that Churchill could have never considered was these captains, because these are older ships, have been on these ships for how long? They had like emotional attachments to these ships. They were extremely unwilling to just sacrifice them, which was the whole purpose of it. The idea was to force their way quickly through the strait. And like you said, they knew they were going to lose ships to mines. They had minesweepers, but they weren't properly bombarding the enemy to protect the minesweepers. And initially, they were using like fishermen with fishing trawlers to try and minesweep, and that didn't work because they got scared and they just like didn't go in. And they didn't think that the Germans would be helping the Ottomans, so there was German officers who were manning a lot of like it was full German crews for some of the artillery, and they were knocking out the Entente warships pretty bad. And yeah, as far as casualties are concerned, the Ottomans took nothing. Like the forts barely got hit anywhere. It was a failure. And then yeah,
There's usually that saying, right? Uh, Attacking an entrenched position on land with sea vessels is not really a good idea.
no, and a lot of they had what you would call mobile artillery. This is what the Germans brought to the table. So of course they have batteries and the coastal fort stuff. Those the Entente warships could hit. The Germans took a lot of their heavy artillery. They put it behind mountain ranges and stuff, so it couldn't be seen. But they had observers on the hills to look at the ships. So basically, they could hit the enemy couldn't hit them, and they couldn't locate them because they're going to move the artillery around. So it took a very small force of Germans to train and help the Ottomans to be able to just completely desolate the Entente warships. And then it was someone's bright idea. It's like, oh, the whole purpose of this is to go through the straits and then just amphibiously assault Istanbul. Why don't we just do a land campaign to open the straits so we can do that? It's like the whole point was to not do that, and they can't afford to send like 100,000 troops to this secondary theater. And yeah, so then you get Gallipoli, and it's an unmitigated disaster. The Ottomans are all, despite losing an incredible amount, the casualties are terrible. The Ottomans are able to defend. Yeah, so if you're looking on YouTube right now, he's putting up a map. You can see the two landings. The Anzac forces were in the north. The French and the British were in the south at Cape Helles. And either side did well. There was another landing at the end that's a little bit further north of the Anzac position where they thought that they would finally break through. Never happens. The Saribauer range is merciless. They're attacking
Yeah.
pillboxes and stuff.
I think the true victor of Gallipoli you could call were the flies.
Yeah, both sides. The casualties are unbelievable in this, but
Well,
the
to be fair,
Ottomans
that's
won.
pretty much World War One in a nutshell.
Yeah. What's funny is when I was writing these scripts, 95% of every battle the Ottomans take part in isn't just a loss, it's devastating for them. Like, and it's humiliating how badly they do. This is like one of the only campaigns where they they took more losses than the Entente, but they won the battle. And there are some legendary figures, Kamal Pasha and all that, come out from this specific battle, and they're going to lead
Is there
revolutions
really
later.
a greater Turkish uh, hero other than Mustafa Kemal from this battle?
Unless you want to mention all the other pashas who were 100% responsible for the Armenian genocide and kept their meeting minutes about it, which is what's crazy is they were boasting about the genocide they were doing, and a lot of the information about the
Yeah,
genocide
but
is from
apparently
them
you can't
just,
talk about it today, right?
oh yeah, because the current country that we won't name that doesn't acknowledge it isn't doing a genocide against Kurds at the moment. you know, it's not ironic. But yeah, no, it's one of the most. I think this is arguably even more well documented than maybe even the Holocaust because we have all of the meeting minutes from the individuals in power. So, like Enver Pasha, for example, who boasts to his allies in Germany and other places.
I think he was like kind of like in an equivalent of prime minister, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's a small cabal of these leadership characters who what do you call it? They thought that if they sent the orders without writing, that they just wouldn't come back to them. But then at the same time, they're boasting to like their Central Power allies about what they're doing. And who, if you know your history, one of the most famous things that Adolf Hitler said in some of his earlier speeches, who talks about the Armenian genocide. The reason why he's bringing that up is because the Germans were fully aware of what was going on. They didn't like it, but the the Ottomans were telling them and boasting about it, giving them ideas. By the
One
way,
of the greatest things, like the figures I love that came out of the Gallipoli is this gentleman whose portrait I'm about to share. General John Monash from the
Monash.
Australians. And I think he deserves to be called the most innovative general of World War One.
Yeah.
And I think he actually saved a lot of at the Gallipoli campaign for a lot of the Fourth Brigade had a better chance given since he joined his service as a reservist, worked as an engineer, so kind of helped fortify his section of the beachhead far better. And he tried to do whatever he could for the soldiers,